As a 58-year-old former chief executive officer of 9 companies over 28 years, I have seen a lot of business, but I've never seen anything like what I'm about to share with you today. It is nothing short of a phenomenon. A phenomenon is often a one-time event and is defined as an unusual, significant, and remarkable occurrence. But what I'm going to share with you is a remarkable occurrence that borders on the monumental. Not simply because it's never happened before, but because of its size. It is the convergence, the transformation, and integration of 2 massive industries. And through that convergence, it has created a 3rd industry that has now become the world's fastest growing. So let's talk about what these elements are. Number 1 is the mobile phone industry. Number 2 is the advertising industry. And number 3 is the one that was created by the convergence of number 1 and number 2 and has now become the world's fastest growing, and that's the mobile phone application industry. Let's first talk about the massive mobile industry. And I want to put everything in a global context first to give you a perspective of how it compares to the other things in our lives. We are 7 billion people on the planet, and here's what belongs to us. We have 1 billion automobiles registered in use, 1.2 billion personal computers, including desktops, laptops, and tablets, and we have 1.6 billion television sets. But mobile utterly dwarfs them all. There are 6.58 billion subscribers currently active, which is equivalent to 94% of the world's population. That's 5.5 times more mobile phones than computers, 4 times more mobile phones than all the televisions worldwide. It is so massive, folks, that it passed $1 trillion a year back in 2010 and is now approaching $2 trillion. Okay, so that's number 1. Now we'll move on to number 2, the advertising industry, and that's another giant, $1.7 trillion a year. Advertising started in the old days on the radio, and then it shifted to the TV for decades, and it was an obsession, right? The expression was all the eyes were glued to the tube. But then it exploded onto the internet, and all the eyes followed, from our desktops to our laptops to mobile phones, and now most of us spend most of our time on the net using our phones. So the advertising industry is headed directly towards us and into the palm of our hand. The $1.7 trillion advertising industry is on a collision course with the nearly $2 trillion mobile phone industry. Why? It's very simple. Because the average person looks at their phone 150 times a day. That's where all the eyes are going now. Okay, that was number 2, and finally we get to number 3, the new baby, mobile phone apps, which has become the key and the gateway that connects these 2 gigantic industries. Now, it's tiny in comparison, and it's hard for me to say this because it's hard to say that anything is tiny that's $30 billion a year, but, compared to multi-trillion-dollar industries, it is tiny. On the other hand, it's staggering in virtue of its infancy. Mobile phone apps only began in 2010. Apple started all this craziness by introducing iPhone apps, and history was about to be written. Now, we measure the growth of the app industry not by subscribers, but by the number of downloads. It started in January 2010, but by January 2011, even Apple was shocked that 10 billion apps were downloaded in that very first year. The following year, 2012, 30 billion apps were downloaded, and some experts were beginning to wonder if it was starting to mature and peak, but it hadn't even started. Last year, 2013, it more than doubled 2012. It jumped to 73 billion. This year, it will triple to 120 billion. And in about 18 months, it's amazing, folks. In about 18 months, almost 300 billion per year. 300 billion. Let's break that down. That's over 800 million downloads per day. If we break it down even further, it's over 500,000 per second. So it's growing. It's going to grow from 10 billion 3 years ago to 300 billion in just the next 18 months. 30 times growth. Folks, you don't have to be a CEO to understand why that's the fastest growing industry in the world. Okay, so what does this all mean to us? Where are we in this grand design? Well, we're dead center on the tracks of this colossal collision of almost $4 trillion of industry, and I'm going to explain to you why. If we look at our phones and average 150 times per day, then every advertiser in the world will want their ads on our phones. That's simple. And if the best way to get those ads in front of our eyes on our phones is a mobile phone application, then every advertiser in the world will want a mobile phone app. Simple. There's only one problem. They can't because it's too expensive. It costs a fortune. Now, that's not a big deal if you're a giant multinational corporation that can easily afford anywhere from a 5 to 7 figure budget to go out and create and code and support and advertise and release a mobile phone app. But if all the eyes in the world are looking at their phones, what happens to local business? What happens to all the small, medium, and large businesses, the ones that are owned by our families and friends and that represent today over 90% of our economy and 90% of the employment worldwide? What can they do if they can't afford a giant budget for a mobile app but desperately need to get in front of that new wave of consumers? We've got the answer. The answer is Ubiz, the mobile app developed by BizBiz for over the last 2 years, the app that has become the key and the gateway for 90% of commerce worldwide. So what is Ubiz? It's an application that allows a merchant to do two very important things. First, to communicate with all their existing customers anywhere in the world directly on their mobile phones with their specials and photos and beautiful graphics. You know, email advertising is becoming less and less effective. It's just getting cluttered in the inbox. People don't look at it anymore. This gets right in front of the eyes of these people, wherever they are, the customers, anywhere in the world. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a merchant. It could be any institution. It could be a municipality. It could be a university. It could be a high school sports team. There's a storm coming. Instead of everybody calling everybody, they send out one message and all the parents, teachers, and the students get the message instantly. Now, that's number one. It's a very, very, very effective communications tool. And secondly, because it's a free download for members and it saves people money, we know it's going to become wildly viral because we've already seen the overnight success of the money-saving apps, right? Like Living Social, Groupon, Foursquare, anywhere from 35 to 120 million users virtually overnight. Ubiz will experience that same viral growth, but it will happen even faster because unlike those other apps, Ubiz has a secret weapon for the merchant that no one else offers, and it works using GPS and geo-targeting. It's very sophisticated. Here's what happens. When any free member travels within 10 kilometers or a 6.25-mile radius of the merchant, they will get pinged with the specials, photos, and whatever the merchant is offering that day. This allows the merchant to target a whole new group of customers in their area. It's called localization, and no one else offers that functionality. So what do you think? What should this state-of-the-art application cost a merchant who would otherwise need to have a multi-5, six-figure budget to develop a mobile app? It's unbelievable, folks. $30. Not a day, not a week, not even a month. Per year. $30 per year. 8 cents a day, which instantly made Ubiz the industry disruptor of two massive industries. It became the most cost-effective communications tool in the history of the almost $2 trillion mobile industry and the most cost-effective advertising platform in the history of the $1.7 trillion advertising industry. Folks, when you have a service that millions and millions of people will enjoy and demand and use every single day, and you're at the very beginning of that, well, then you've positioned yourself in the right place at the perfect time to take advantage of a multi-trillion-dollar shift of wealth. I'm begging you, get back together with the person who invited you to listen to this message today. We're at the beginning of something extraordinary, truly special. And BizBiz.Mobi is the only company in the world that will offer it. Don't miss it. Be a part of it.